Looking on Sports Central, we go over our next team projection of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Florida Gators, a team that won the SEC East last season, and they were that close to winning the SEC title game in 2020. But I definitely think Florida could go right back to being a contender in the SEC next season in 2021, and that's what we're going over here today. We're also going to be going over a few players that Florida will be losing, who they were returning, and also looking at their schedule for the first time this offseason, starting out with the previous 6 games for Florida. And if you look at this team down the stretch, I mean, they were 8-4 overall, which an 8-4 record you usually say was a pretty mediocre season. But, I mean, for Florida, considering this team did not play a single non-conference game in the regular season last year, this was not a terrible season for Florida at all. I mean, this team won the SEC East, which was huge for them. It's been kind of tough for Florida to get past Georgia in the past few years, but this was a great season for Florida, being able to beat Georgia out for that SEC East. And they were that close to beating Alabama in the SEC Championship. I mean, this team, even though they lost to LSU, that still was a pretty ridiculous loss. I mean, you can't take a loss to LSU like that, especially considering LSU was not a very good team last season and still expect to make it to the playoff. But I mean, this team was only 6 points away from beating Alabama. This team was a touchdown away, and really considering how good of a team Alabama was last season, that was as close as anyone ever played the Crimson Tide all last season in that SEC championship matchup between Florida and Alabama. I mean, they still lost 46-52, but it was a very close game. Florida played that game extremely well. They did lose to LSU, though, once again, 34-37. And of course, the Oklahoma game, I don't know what happened for the Gators in that matchup. All around, just a bad day for Florida as they lost that one 20-55. But if you X out that Oklahoma game, this team all around had an outstanding 2020 season. I mean, if you look at the final games of the regular season for this team, like, they were blown out. Teams such as Vanderbilt 38-17, they blew out Kentucky 34-10, beat Tennessee 31-19. But the main problem for Florida last season was on the defensive side. This team really allowed a lot of points to some teams that they certainly shouldn't have been. I mean, allowing like 17 points to Vanderbilt, you can't really be doing that if you're wanting to be a team like Alabama by any means. But Florida all around, still an outstanding season. They started out the year 5-1, finished out the year 3-3. Then again, the final half of the schedule, I'd say, was much more difficult than the first half, but still not a bad season for Florida. Looking at your roster preview going to next season, though, you do lose your starting quarterback Kyle Trask, which is going to be a tough loss, I think, for next season for Florida, as Kyle Trask last year was a huge highlight for the Gators, putting up over 4,200 yards with a 43 touchdown to 8 interception ratio, and then he also had a 69% completion rate, nearly 70. So Kyle Trask all around had an outstanding season. I'd probably say he was, I mean, if you're looking at completion rate, Mac Jones was the best in the conference, and I mean, I think we all can agree that Kyle Trask, though, was definitely up there. I definitely think Kyle Trask was a top 2, top 3 quarterback in the SEC last season. They returned their top running back, Dameon Pierce. That's going to be a huge return, as he had right around 700 yards, 5 touchdowns last season. They also returned their second running back, Malik Davis. Watch out for him next season, as he put up nearly 700 yards as well, but no touchdowns. So he did not have any touchdowns last season, but both running backs are coming back for Florida. That's going to be huge going into next season. This running back core looks great back there in the backfield. But as for the receiving core, they lose their top receiver in Kadarius Toney. He's headed to the NFL, so he will not be with the Florida Gators next season. But last year, he had a great season, 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns for Florida. So he had a great season for Florida. If you look at Kyle Pitts, though, that's going to be a tough loss there in the tight end position, as Kyle Pitts was definitely the best tight end in the nation last season. He put up over 770 yards for the Gators last year with 12 touchdowns. He was a huge target for Kyle Trask. So that is going to be a tough loss for Florida not having Kyle Pitts next year. But I certainly think, they returned their third receiver, and it looks like Jacob Copeland. That's the main receiver that's going to be returning for the Gators. Last season, he didn't have that big of an impact on this team, putting up 450 yards and 3 touchdowns, but still, it will be good to have him back at least. But they also lose their second receiver, Trevon Grimes. Can't forget about him as well, as he put up nearly 600 yards. So all around, this receiving core is taking some major hits. The quarterback core, of course, or your quarterback, Kyle Trask, is leaving, so that's going to be a big hit for the skill players on this offensive side. But same thing with the receiving core. I mean, this receiving core is losing a lot going into next season. I mean, really on this offensive side, the only main thing I'm confident in for the Gators right now is the running back core. Dameon Pierce, Malik Davis should all be just fine for the rushing core for Florida. But if you look in the receiving core, this team definitely is got a couple of big question marks going into next season. Definitely something to watch out for the Gators. But they do have a lot of depth. This team certainly has got some great recruiting coming in, some of the best in the SEC. So Florida should be okay there. They will be a little bit inexperienced next season, so I don't really think Florida will be quite as good in 2021 as they were in 2020, mainly because, once again, you're losing Kyle Trask, which very underrated quarterback in my opinion. Like you guys heard, if you guys were around all of last offseason, I was telling you guys about how underrated of a quarterback Kyle Trask was, and he definitely was. I mean, if you look at him this season, had a huge breakout season for Florida, and that's going to be a tough loss going into this season for the Gators, is not having their starting quarterback with him. So definitely watch out for that going into next season. But if you look at the receiving core, once again, lots of question marks there. There was 2 offensive linemen, 2 defensive linemen, then 3 in the secondary. So this defense does lose 5 starters, something to watch out for there. Chances of winning the SEC East next season, though, that is a big question that a lot of Gator fans, I'm sure, are going to be asking. Georgia next season is going to be good. I will say that right now, and as much as you probably don't want to hear that, Georgia's going to be really good next season. JT Daniels, they got a great offense coming back. That Georgia team, I'd say, is probably the favorite for me to win the division right now. And as much as you probably don't want to hear that, I think that's definitely the most reasonable assumption right now. I think Florida's going to be definitely top 3. I would not be surprised at all if they were second, but Georgia next season is going to be tough for the SEC East division. I do think Georgia's going to kind of have a season similar to what Florida did this past season. So for Florida, is it possible for them to win the division? I definitely think so. I think Florida could win the division, but it's going to be, once again, much tougher than last year. If you look at your schedule, you start off the season on September 4th against Florida Atlantic. You got South Florida is what I should say, on the road on September 11th. You got Alabama. Then that Alabama game is going to be tough, especially considering it's at the beginning of the season. But then you got Tennessee at home to finish out your September. Then in October, you got Kentucky on the road, Vanderbilt at home on October 9th. You got LSU on the road. That should be an interesting matchup as well, considering LSU, of course, had that crazy win at the end of last season. You got Georgia as well. That's going to be a massive game for the division on October 30th. Watch out for that one there. Good thing is for Florida is they do have that game after a bye week, so they do have a week off before that Georgia matchup. Got South Carolina on the road to start out your November. Then you got Samford, of course, your last non-conference game. You got Missouri then, and then you finish out the season with Florida State. So that's actually another non-conference game there. But Florida State, of course, next season, I think they'll be a little bit better. But they definitely won't be a big contender, I won't think. But if you look at the first half of the schedule here, I got it getting confident wins over Florida Atlantic and South Florida. I think both those teams should definitely not be as good next season, and I think Florida should be definitely a favorite in both of those matchups. Then you got Alabama, of course. I'm going to say that's going to be a close game right now. I don't really expect it to be an outright win on either side for now. I definitely think it's going to be close. I think Florida does have a chance, but with it being at the beginning of the season, I would probably favor Alabama to win that game right now. Tennessee, that's going to be a win. Kentucky on the road then on October 2nd. I'm going to say that's a close one as well. I think Kentucky could be improved next season. I don't expect them to be great, but with it being on the road, I will put that as a yellow game for now. Then Vanderbilt on the 9th of October. That's also going to be a guaranteed win. So the green games are pretty much guaranteed wins, I would say. You got 4 guaranteed wins in the first 6 games. I would consider possibly putting Kentucky under a green game. I definitely favoring Florida over Kentucky right now, but definitely watch out for that one. Alabama as well. That's definitely going to be the main tough game of your first 6 games. As for the second half, you get LSU. That's going to be a close one. Same thing with Georgia. I'm also putting South Carolina under yellow game because of it being on the road. I think that could be a close matchup there with it being, once again, on the road, especially if we're seeing fans in the stands again. But South Carolina still, I would probably favor, if you're looking at the teams in general, I would definitely favor Florida over South Carolina for now. But I'm gonna keep it as a close game for now. Samford, that's gonna be a win. Missouri on the road on the 20th, I will say is also gonna be a close matchup. Missouri next season actually is returning quite a bit. They could be a dark horse team in the SEC, but then you got Florida State to finish out the year. That's also going to be a win. I'm not expecting much out of the Seminoles again. I just don't think that team has got quite enough firepower to put up a great season quite yet. But record projection, 10-2 to 11-1 for Florida next season. I think this team is definitely going to be right towards the top of the SEC East. Once again, it's going to be tough to beat Georgia. I definitely think it's possible, but Georgia next year is going to be a very good team. You have to win that game on October 30th, though, if you're going to win the division. That Georgia team, I mean, especially when you got both teams towards the top with 10-11 wins, I mean, that game is going to be crucial for both those teams. I mean, if you already want to know who's going to win the SEC East, it's going to come to that game. I mean, usually, whoever wins the Florida-Georgia matchup almost always, at least over the past 5 years, has gone on to win the division. So if Georgia wins the matchup, they'll probably be in the SEC championship game, but vice versa for Florida as well. So that's why the game is so crucial. But that being said, 10-2 to 11-1 is my record projection for Florida. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, though, on the Gators. Let me know your record predictions and all of that down in the comments. I appreciate you guys all watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys all later.